Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It's Gina here. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and live a more vibrant, intentional second half. Today, I have another inspirational story for you. My guest went from retail marketing career to full-time artist after 50. She didn't know she was headed that direction. It's an exciting story. I can't wait to share it with you. My guest today is Andrea-Garvey. She is an artist and a teacher of art. Andrea, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm so excited. So nice to meet you. And I'm really excited to share my story. So thank you, Gina.
It is my pleasure. Of course, you were shared with me with Betty Franks, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. We love
Betty. Yes, she's amazing.
And so she graciously introduced me to you to share your story of how you just went from a career you were happy with into a completely new direction after 50. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Isn't that nuts? I think about that now too. There's a lot of people who get to their 50s and are, disgruntled or they're not happy with their job and think, what can I do to change my career? I really wasn't thinking about that. And it happened. Let's see, when I was 50, I loved all my jobs. I just loved my jobs. I loved being in the corporate environment and hanging out with people. And I was a creative director and in marketing, and it was amazing. And then my backstory is that I always was like an artist. I loved to paint. I had a graphic design degree, but even in my corporate jobs, I never did art. It was more business and managing. And so I never really picked up a paintbrush or did any sort of like art on the weekends. I was busy raising my boys and just doing family and loving life. And then when I was 50, it was actually before I was 50. I went to full time at 50. So it was around 45. My mother-in-law, who I was very close to, Anna, passed away suddenly. She passed away in her early 70s, but she was a spiritual woman, an artist, and somebody who I just got so inspired to be with. And it was devastating for our family. And she was sort of, she was the big matriarch of our family. She was sort of our big rock. And so when she passed away, I didn't know that I would be hit with such grieving. And what happened was 2 nights after she died, I had a dream of a painting, like very, very vivid. And I've told this story a few times, but it was so vivid that and in color. And I woke up, just shot out of bed, and I grabbed a sketch. Like, I don't know, it wasn't like I had a sketchbook, but I sketched it on a back of a piece of paper or something, because I didn't want to forget my image. Like, so many times, I don't know about you, but when I have dreams, I'll I think I'm going to remember them, and then like 10 minutes later, they're gone. So I sketched it out and I thought about it. And I went to the art store. I bought a big sheet of paper. I got some markers and some paints and some pencils. I didn't even know what I was buying. And I just started to recreate the painting and it became my therapy. And I didn't even know it was going to be my therapy. I laid this big piece of paper down on the dining room table. I had time off of work and I just started working on this beautiful piece. And the thing that's really interesting about the actual painting is It was all the things that Anna loved. It was beautiful, colorful flowers. She loved Hawaii. It was very vibrant, just like with rainbows and the ocean and just all the things that I love too. So that took me about 2 months to make. And it really made me feel like she was right here with me when I was working on it. I felt very connected to her. And then gradually, I would just be like, oh, I need to go get some more paints. I need to go get more stuff. This is so much fun. And I couldn't stop thinking about creating art. And so I would do my day job. I would take care of my kids. They were little. And then I would just start painting on the weekends. And then eventually, all of a sudden, there was this little tiny, voice inside my head, which is keep painting, keep painting, keep creating, keep creating. It made me feel good. I really enjoyed it. And then the retail background in me from my corporate world was like, hey, maybe we can make some money doing this and sell it. So anyway, that's sort of how I flipped the switch on thinking I'm going down one road. Everything is just really fine. And then something happened in my life that switched a gear that created this desire to paint and be creative that turned into this passion that would not slow down. Like it's still to this day. That's all I want to do. And anyway, it's a bittersweet story because of course, we would love to have Anna back in our lives, but I do really, truly believe that she's in my studio with me and I'm very connected to her still. So anyway, that's sort of how that kind of came about.
So you said that she was creative. Did she ever share her art with you?
Yeah, I have a piece of her art here right there. And I have some pieces in the house and she did share. But the thing about Anna I think what I really was drawn to was here is a woman and she was, when I met her 60s, 70s, she would have the fullest life. She would go to workshops. She would go to classes. She would do yoga. She would do walks. I would look at her and be like, she is living life, like really living life. And she inspired me so much that when she died and I had this dream, I thought to myself, I want to go do workshops. I want to go do the stuff that she was doing. She was taking art classes and music classes, and I want to go do that. And so what happened was, it was about a year later, not even maybe 6 months, I saw a online art workshop from Jane Davenport and Tisha Moore. And there are two artists who were not in California. They're out in, one's in Australia, one I think was on the East Coast. And I saw this, it was one of the early online classes. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do an online class. Oh my goodness. That was I felt like I was 10 years old and taking my favorite art class from my favorite teacher. And I did this all, at night and on the weekends. And so that led to me taking another one. I did one with Tracy Verdugo that was in person for 5 days in Palm Desert. And I was thinking, I have just found it was just like gold to me, like learning and being around other people who are creative and being in a new community, finding your tribe that's full of amazing creative people. It just changed my life. So that was like the early days of me figuring it all out,
Now, how long did it take for you to get to the point where you were like, I'm going to leave my job and do this thing?
Okay. So that's a funny story too. So it took me 5 years. So for 5 years, I did a side hustle. I started an Etsy store. I did markets on across from the grocery store to bigger art festivals on the weekends to really trying to, sell my things, but not leave my comfort of a corporate job because, it's good money. And I didn't feel like I was ready to go take on this massive new career. So I definitely for 5 years did a little bit of both. And just kind of came up with products I thought would sell well. People started to really be interested in my art. That's a whole nother story too of how I sold my first painting. But after 5 years, My husband looked at me and because I like took over the dining room. I mean, it was like crazy, right? And so he said to me, if you don't quit your job, I'm going to quit my job. So I thought, like, well, that is an opportunity that I don't want to pass up. So, okay, fine. And it also was, for 5 years, as I was working on a different business, the passion for me to do art as a full-time job was so strong. It was getting stronger and stronger that I didn't love going into the office as much as I used to love, because my mind was focused on being creative and having this new passion. And it was like the right time. I remember, my boss had said to me, are you like, he probably could sense it. He's like, maybe we should just, part ways. I'm like, okay. And so actually leaving my job, I was very stressed about making that decision. And my boss actually, I think, saw it. Like he must've had, some kind of idea. So it all worked for me. And I was talking about this yesterday in a business call, and I was definitely, it's a big leap to do that. I had huge support from my friends and my community and my family to help me. And one thing I'll tell people, because I talked about this last night, is, when you make the decision to leave your career, if you have, or a job or whatever it is, whatever decision it is, I said to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, what is the worst thing that can happen? Okay. So the worst thing that could happen is I start off my art business and it doesn't work, or it's a flop, or I don't sell anything and I don't love it anymore and the passion's gone. So that could be like the worst thing. I'm talking career to career, not really the life part. And so I said, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do then. And I had a countdown of a year to quit I was counting in my head. 50 was my magic number. It's a big number for everybody. So that was the year I was like, I am going to quit when I'm 50. It was sort of a thing for me. And so when I was getting closer to that time, I wrote a list of people that I could call or look up if I needed a job. So I sort of had this thing in my back pocket. Okay. Yeah. Like if it doesn't work, okay, I'm going to call all these guys and see if I can get a job. And it was probably about 6 or 8 months where I was like, oh yeah, no, I am doing this for the rest of my life. I do not need that back pocket. I am all good. And so anyway, that's another fun story about that.
Isn't that interesting though? There's like a heartbeat in us, isn't there? That's kind of giving us that clue that, okay, it's time, it's drawing you. And it sounds like it really takes courage to make that shift, even though that desire was there. How much do we rely on certain things in our minds, even in our lives, to believe that that's the thing you're supposed to do, or that you have to have in order to be, quote, safe or whatever. You don't want people looking at you weird. And did you feel that way?
Absolutely. And I have only recently in the last few years been really doing a lot of mindful work and reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of podcasts. And at the time I didn't know all of this, and Anna loved all that stuff too, but it's only been in the last few years. But fear is a real interesting thing. I feel like, to me, if something is making me nervous, or it's like, oh, I don't know, that's a big deal, there's usually on the other side of fear is this excitement. And sometimes it's hard to understand the difference in your body and your mind, but you could feel the fear, but it's also the adrenaline of something new. And it's so exciting. And, I'm not encouraging everybody to go quit their job and then just not have a plan. There was 5 years where I slowly worked on a plan, and I did it step by step, because that's what we needed to do as a family. But at the same time, even now, when I'm thinking of a new idea or a new product I want to launch or a new direction in my business, there's a little fear there. And you do have to have a little bit of, you have to be a little brave and a little courageous to just kind of go with it. Just go past that, and just take one step towards it. Just take one step. If that's all it is. And then you get to that step and you think, wait, that's not so bad. Okay, I'm going to take the next step. So yeah, fear's a good one. Yeah.
And it's so interesting how there's an internal kind of compass that's directing us in our lives, isn't there?
100%. Yeah. I really feel that I have this other thing happening where if something is on my heart so much, I have to start listening to it. One of the things that I've been doing for the last few years is journaling in the morning, just writing. And some people could do it in the evening, whatever time works for you. But sometimes it's things that are patterns that are coming up and up and up. And this desire to paint was the first 5 years. When I was painting in the beginning, I never thought I would quit my job. It was just the slow process. And then I got to around 50 when I'm thinking, I don't want to work for the big guy anymore. I want to work for myself because I'm creating all of this art. People want to buy it. Let's turn that into a business. And so all of those things and every chapter that I've gone through on this journey, there's always been a little voice that's telling me or guiding me. And I call those the universal whispers. That's what I go with. It's like, they're just whispering to me, hey, you should be doing this. And if they say it enough times, I pay attention. It's a little woo-woo, but it's true. It works for me.
I would totally agree. I felt the same way. I was in retail and I was like, I didn't want to be doing that anymore at 50. There was something about 50 for me also. It was like, I need to move in a direction that's not this. And it was an interesting, it was literally just looming in my head as this is the deadline. I don't know what, for me, I wasn't 100% sure which direction I was going to go when I first had that thought, but I was looking and seeking. What's interesting for me is my journey, art has always been a part of my life, but my painting journey started while I was still working as well. But it was because I worked in a retail environment this is a funny story. We would have events and we would decorate the bathroom. I know that sounds weird, but it was like a stockroom bathroom.
Yeah, sure.
So they were like, hey, we want you to decorate the bathroom to go with the event. And so I started doing these elaborate things and my family would help me and we'd paint these things, do these things. And that really sparked my confidence in myself to do it, even though I had raised my girls with art. That's a long story. And this podcast is about your journey, but isn't it interesting that there are whispers?
Yes. Yes. I think that if somebody's listening right now and is thinking, I don't know, I'm not hearing any of that stuff, right? I don't get that right now. For me, it's being quiet. And my whole life until I was even in the very beginning, right after Anna passed, is when I started to kind of think like, okay, something is telling me I need to do this. But all the years up to that, I never once thought about anything like that. My life was so fast. I had a great life. I have a great life. But I was doing kids, a social, great, all of that. And it was so fast that I never sat and thought about anything. I really didn't. And now it's only been since I have had the quiet time. I make that quiet space for myself in the mornings and I sit down and I try to do that. I meditate for a little bit and I read and I really try to stay a little centered and grounded. And that has helped me actually listen better to these sort of little magic, moments. So, that could help somebody too, if they're like, I don't hear that, or I'm not hearing like this. I don't know what to do. Sometimes it's okay if you don't know what direction you want to turn into, but just start listening to, I'm not enjoying my current job. Let's say you're not enjoying where you are, but you don't know what you want to actually do or create or be. then start writing about like, why don't you enjoy it? And what are some of those things? Because then it will just open doors to why, okay, well, if I don't like okay, that's not the place for me anymore. I want to think about going in this direction. Maybe it's, whatever it is. I just really find that that has really helped. That really helped me. And maybe that will help somebody else too. But it is interesting, that magic number of 50. And I was telling you earlier, I just feel like I have never been as happy. I've never felt as fulfilled. There's so many, and I loved all of my decades, but I just feel like I am on a totally different playing field right now. And it's just all full of goodness.
I do think that there is something to that shift, though, because, of course, as we talked about before I hit record, I've talked to so many women. I'm in the 5th year of this podcast, and I was reflecting on the fact that many of those women actually were at or around 50, a little bit beyond. Some of them were further beyond. But there was something that happened in a lot of those women's lives when I reflected on it at that point, where their shift was happening in their spirit. Like, I feel like there's something else. Like you said, it's not like the plan was handed to them at 50, but just that internal, there was an internal something that was kind of ticking away and going, yeah, well, I've always been happy. And for some reason it's shifting. And we don't always know why. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think part of it too is that slowing down, and not necessarily physically, but just, I think as women, especially, we have a lot to you're in your 20s and 30s. You got to prove, you want to get out there. You want to have a career. You have to go up against the men in the world. You have to, do this. And then whether you choose to have a family or not have a family, you have to deal with that part of your life. And I feel that we are, as women, take on so much, whether you're caring for your parents, or you're caring for your siblings, or you're involved in your community, or you're involved in the kids' school, or you're involved in your job, or whatever it is. I feel like we give. And I think when we start to slow it down a tiny bit, especially if you're in a crossroads, then it's the best type of self-care, because then you start to listen. You're like, oh, wow, those are some good thoughts coming through. Ideas. So yeah, no, I agree. It's been great. And the thing is, like, I feel so good energetically that I don't, like back in the day when we were little, we would think like 50 was ancient.
I know it. Isn't that just the most ridiculous thing ever? Like, I remember when, my grandparents were this age when I was this age. And I remember thinking they were so old.
So old. Isn't that crazy? I was just talking to my mom and her friend and her adult friends. And I was like, Mom, the 80s are like the 60s now, so let's get to 100. The other thing I wanted to say too, is that I have struggled with, not anymore, but I did struggle with a limiting belief that I was too old. So that did pop up into my head when I was in that fear state of, can I really do this at 50? I mean, who am I to sort of do this when I have the comfort of this, corporate retail job? I don't know. And then what I did to overcome that, if this could help anybody else, is that I looked at people who were older than me, who were very successful and were women who could do what they wanted to do. And they changed their direction of their life at a later date. So maybe it was somebody in their 60s or 70s. But when I look at that, I think, hey, wait a minute. If they can do it, I can do it. And so that's sort of my way I talk to myself when I start to kind of have those limiting beliefs. I think, hey, wait, no, I got this. And it's just a number. Your age is just a number. That's it. It's how you feel inside. And, have the confidence to believe that you can do and open up any doors you want at any time in your life. Just so happens that it's a sweet spot now, but somebody who's listening to this, who's in their 60s and 70s, you can 100% change the direction of what you want to do and fill your heart,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Isn't it funny that we look at age like some kind of physical block, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a physical thing you can't get past. And it's all in our heads. Every last bit of that conversation is all a story that we have either heard, most likely, right? Somehow it's become a truth. But you mentioned that idea that, we do all of these things as women. Well, that's why you can, because look at all you've done.
Mhm.
This is just that next iteration of your life. Yeah, it could be a big change, but it's just another iteration. And we're just gaining knowledge and
Yeah.
skills as we move through life, aren't we?
Yes. And I think we're just getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just raising the bar and we are going out there and I totally believe that. Yeah. The more
I
we
think
can.
the hard part is it's the focus shifts from everyone else to ourselves. Did you find
Oh,
that different?
yes. That is so, that's another limiting belief you got to kind of work on, that comes. Okay. So I have been doing a lot of work on that one. And it really comes down to, if you don't take care of yourself, and others will not be taken care of. So if you think about just the basic thing of, if I was rushing around if I was unhappy in my job, I didn't want to be there. I had grudges. I'm just pretending this. I had grudges against the people I'm working with. I had a crappy commute. I got home late. I had to make dinner. I would be resenting my family. I would be resenting my job. And that in turn is that energy and that vibration of feeling like that is only going to multiply. That's it. It's only going to multiply. And then I'm going to start spreading that around everybody around me. So I really encourage people to take care of themselves first and give yourself some self-care. And that could be just taking a walk in nature every day for 20 minutes to, hey, going to get a pedicure if you wanted to, or going to, a fun little cafe with your girlfriend, on the spur. It could be sleeping in, telling the kids to make their own breakfast this day. It could be so many things. And I have found a huge shift in myself by taking care of myself. And there may be some people out there who look at me and be like, oh boy, she's only about her or whatever. And it doesn't matter what they think. It really doesn't, because the people who love me and the people who I love and my job that I love, they're getting all of that good energy from me. They're getting it all because I'm taking care of myself, and I think if you can start to do that, and it's not an overnight thing, doesn't happen overnight. It's not all of a sudden like, okay, I'm going to start taking care of it's a slow journey. And then eventually there's a shift and you'll realize it's not worth me getting all mad about the guy who cut me off, or my husband who was driving me crazy for a few minutes, or my kids. It's not worth it anymore. So there has been a shift, and I can stop myself now if I get down that, road, and I just go back to, it's all about me. And what's really funny is I have this conversation with some of my girlfriends who I think quite don't understand why I choose to pick the way I want to feel if I'm in a situation that bothers me. Whether let's just pick on my husband for a minute. Okay. We're going to just use him as a guinea pig. And so let's say he annoys me. Back in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I would probably just annoy him back. And the next thing you know, we're in a stupid fight, and then we're back and back and back. But now what I do is I think to myself, I just don't even want to deal with this right now. And so I'll either walk away or I choose just not to engage. And in 3 minutes, the whole thing has died down and it's nothing. And it's because I chose to take care of myself first. Some people look at that and think I am putting my head in the sand, or I am not, what's that word I'm looking for? That I am not confronting the issue. Some people feel like that's what I'm doing. And I'm telling you, I don't feel that way. I feel better about myself, and it's working. So, it's working for me. And the bottom line is it's taking care of myself first. That's what it is. Do you think like that?
I do hear what you're saying. Yes. It's like those moments of quiet, the journaling, the meditation, the taking the walk, those are all investments in ourselves and in our emotional and spiritual and physical wellness. Like it's less about, I feel like at this age, it's less about losing the weight, looking a certain way, checking all the boxes. I feel like that's one of the shifts. It's really, like you said, slowing down and listening to what you need. And it does give us an expansion in our ability to cope and to manage our emotions better because we're not on the treadmill like we were, which the treadmill, I think, is a natural season of life.
Sure.
I don't think I've met anybody who didn't live the treadmill version of life, But I hear you, because the way I would interpret what you're saying is it is really time to know yourself.
Yes.
And to hold a space for yourself.
Yes.
I do think this season definitely calls for that. There's something about midlife where if we do continue to deny the desires that we have, whether it be for rest or for quiet or to read a book, you know what I mean? If we keep denying ourselves those things for other people, we do become resentful. There's something about this season of life. Like we could do it in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, and it felt aligned. And we continue to love and serve. I agree. But I feel like the way we come at it, that shift is something that's an important shift. And that's what you're saying is you got to think about, what do I need?
Yes. Because who else is going to do it? Your spouse or your parents or your kid, no one's going to do what you need more than you can do to yourself. No one's going to do that for you. So you almost have to be resigned to like, okay, I need to take care of myself and feel that. And especially what we've all done, this whole world, whether, all the heaviness happening now, the pandemic, we have gone through some 2+ years of a hard time, and there's a lot of sadness out there and there's a lot of heaviness out there. And it's really important, whether you're at any age, to think about what could you do to love yourself a little bit more, to give you some little bit of peace and joy. And I just want to also mention that the rest and the walking and all that, but being creative doesn't necessarily mean you have to paint or draw. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to play a musical instrument or sing. To me, being creative is like going out into the garden and picking flowers and putting them in a vase and figuring out how it's going to look together. It could be cooking. It could be actually almost any hobby is creative. But I find that from the beginning, after Anna passed away, that was the untapping of creativity for me. And that changed the whole direction of where I am today. And I still continue to use creativity as my sort of medicine. You think about everything that's going on in the world today and all the fighting, I will literally come into my art studio. I will just start playing around. No idea what I'm making. I don't really have today I'm going to do this. No, it's just literally taking your hand and taking some brushes and moving it around with some paints. And then in 30 minutes, it's like you just drank, a good juice of medicine right there. It's so healing. So I think that if you're thinking like, what could I do for a little self-care, or what can I do to love on myself a little bit more? It's like, think about what you like to do that's creative. People write, there's so many different things, pottery, and just take a class. Just start with a class. Like, and if you're listening, you're like, well, I'm not creative. I believe that every single person is creative on this planet. I will tell you, if somebody said to me, well, I'm not, I will find something in them that's creative. And that could mean, hey, just sign up for a class once a week at night. Just find something, open that, education book in your community college and just take a class and just see what happens. And it may spark and open a door to so many different roads, and you have no idea what the end part of the road is. And that's what I would also encourage people to know. When I did this journey, I look back on I look back at the fifth, because I'm going to be 56 in April. So I look back at my 50 when I turned 50. And if you said to me at 50, here's what you're going to be doing at 55, 6, I would be like, you are kidding me. How the heck am I going to do that? Same thing of 45 to 50, if you start thinking about that. And so I really encourage people to not really worry too much about how or what it's going to look like at the end or what you want to do. Just keep opening those doors little by little, and that will show you the way, you know?
I think that's a really important point. This is not something we're going to have all figured out when we start. And I don't know that we've ever had things all figured out when we start, but if you think about a career or raising a family, we can put more parameters around things like that to some degree. But this journey of shift in midlife, we've come to this place and we're different than we were when we took those journeys. You know, we've shifted, we've grown, we've had more experiences. So I think that there's a piece of it where we kind of need to reacquaint ourselves with ourselves. And I think that creativity idea, my gosh, I 150% agree.
Yeah.
You know, try it. You may not like it.
Yeah.
But you may love it, or it may lead to something else. Yes. And there's so many people, that story, Andrea, drives me crazy. Well, I'm not creative, because they qualify it or they quantify it as music, right?
Yeah.
Art.
Yeah.
And maybe writing. I don't know that everyone recognizes the creativity of writing, but it's like, no, it's the way you decorate your house. You could go and create a garden. You could crochet. Cooking is a huge creative thing. There's some people where that is their thing. Baking, dancing,
you know, taking a Zumba class. Oh my gosh, I used to take the Zumba classes like 10 years ago. I was a Zumba queen. Can't do it now. But yeah, I think that if you take away when I was in 5th grade, my art looked like crap and I'm not an artist. Take that whole mentality away and start from scratch, start from day one, and just think, what do I like? You know, what fills me up a little bit? And I would definitely try, you know, or just try some stuff and just do a little bit. It's such a medicine. I just wish that everybody in the world could know this is a truth and experience it. And that, I think, is just so powerful, you know. That's what we need to do.
Well, you know, I did the same thing.
What did you do?
I turned to art much more heavily during that first part when the whole world felt like it had just gone off the rails.
Yeah.
And I would just sit and paint and sit and paint and sit. I mean, I was super prolific because it was definitely my therapy, my medicine. And creativity is a fantastic outlet for emotions. And for some people, I shared this story just recently. My sister-in-law used creativity to go through some big shifts in her life. She's quite a bit younger than me, but we had some good conversations around how art, like she was just writing a word and then coloring it in and really kind of like art journaling, if you will.
Yep.
So she wasn't attempting to create a piece of art. That was not the goal.
Yes.
The goal was to process the inner struggle through color. And she was using pens. It wasn't even like
perfect.
She hadn't run out and spent a lot of money. And I think people think creativity, they go, oh, and then I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that. And I don't have the space. It does. You just need a place to sit and invest, or like you said, take a class. You know, it's an endless conversation, isn't it? Find what sparks your joy, I think is what you're saying. Find the thing that kind of resonates with you.
Yeah. And you may not know it right away. And it's funny that you mentioned that about your sister, because during the beginning of the pandemic, I have a Facebook community. It's an art community. It's not exactly art like painting. It's anybody creative community. And I started going live every day just because the community needed it. And we weren't doing big art projects. We were literally taking our pen or a pencil or a marker, and we were doodling and zentangling. Zentangling is a whole meditative form of doing art. And that was 2 years ago. And so this past Saturday, we did it again. We had everybody hopped on the live. I said, get a piece of paper. It could be the back of anything, a napkin, I don't care. Get your marker and just start doodling. And I showed them how I do these little doodle flowers. And then everybody's been posting all of their doodles and they feel better. Mm-hmm. You know, that makes them feel better. And that's all you need. That's it.
Mm-hmm. You know, I just interviewed a gal. She's the original doodle lady.
Oh, how fun.
She started doodling through a cancer journey.
Oh, I love that.
She was sitting in the doctor's office and she just asked the receptionist. She asked the receptionist for a piece of paper and a pen. And she says, I'm not creative. But she now has navigated her way to being the original doodle lady. And so
Isn't that amazing right there, though? Like she did not know. She used it to help her, to heal her. And it turned into this beautiful thing. That is so beautiful. I love that story.
And I think we need to give ourselves some space to be curious about what we could do, what we could enjoy.
100%. Yeah.
Because I think that's that limiting belief you talked about.
Yeah.
When we define ourselves so tightly that there's no room for curiosity and wonder.
Well, and especially if you're on that treadmill, there is no time to think. That's why you need to, give yourself that space to be curious. You know what I find really creative too is just making videos sometimes. Sometimes part of my art is I do courses, and sometimes just editing, you know, I'm not telling anybody to go make videos, but I'm just saying like, that's creative. So there might be parts of your job that you don't think is creative, but it is. And when you said earlier, home decor, I mean, that's perfect way to start. If you feel like you don't have a creative part and you don't, whatever, take a corner of any room in your house and try to find things in your house to go decorate. I'm not telling you to go buy all stuff, but see what you can do to create a little niche, a little area that makes you feel good. It could be grabbing a blanket from another room or hanging a picture or putting a couple candles together. That is creative right there.
A lot of these things, wouldn't you agree, Andrea? They fill your cup. You don't know how much they fill your cup.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. My cup is full.
When you look back and you're like, oh, you just feel lighter. You feel, you feel better.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe we need to say that if it does happen to be painting or drawing, just like my guest Carol said, you know, she goes, it wasn't even to look good. You know, it was just a process of creating. And then she would step away from it and come back and be like, hey, that's not half bad. So I think if we remove the expectation of ending up with something that's a completed, perfect piece of art and let go of that expectation and just enjoy the process.
In all of my classes, I talk about that. Especially if we just want to talk about painting for 1 second, there's a stage in almost every painting I've ever done, and I'm sure you can relate to this, where it is ugly and you're just like, oh my goodness, what the heck? I just wasted hours. And in the beginning of my painting journey, as in my midlife area, I would have a hard time and I would get frustrated. And I can understand if somebody is writing music or writing a story. If it's so perfect, then there's probably not perfect. There's something in there. So I tell my students all the time to think of this as a journey. Think of this as it's one layer at a time, because my paintings are often in layers. And the next layer, okay, is going to make the bottom layer even more beautiful, but you may not see it yet. So you just have to enjoy that journey and keep moving through any frustration that you have. So if you are if you are trying something new in any of the arts or anything creative and you're frustrated, you just have to either put it down and come back and revisit it, see it with a new set of eyes, and just keep pushing through instead of quitting. Just keep pushing through, because all the magic and all the beauty of your end result is in the process of finding that next step. So yeah, I tell people that all the time. It's that taking 30 minutes. I grew up next to an artist, and she's amazing. It's Terry Katz-Kazimov, and she's had her one-woman shows in France, and she's incredible. She studied under Hockney. She's so good. And so anyway, she told me when I was 10 years old, she said, do me a favor. Every day, just take out a piece of paper, a little sketchbook, and doodle for 10 minutes. Draw something for 10 minutes, sketch for 10 minutes, because that's a hand muscle and you'll just continue to get better. But it's also stopping what you're doing and just making some marks is going to make yourself feel better. And now that I think for 20 or so years, I didn't do it because I was busy, but now I do it every day. And it's really been a wonderful thing to do. So if you don't know where to start, get yourself a white sheet of paper. Everybody's got one at their house. Get yourself a ballpoint pen and just doodle for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Draw shapes, write words over and over and over on top of each other with different colored pencils or pens. Yeah, there's so many ways, but we are built to be creative. I believe that at the core of my being. And even if it doesn't become the next iteration of what you do in your life, it is an absolutely invaluable resource for our mental and emotional health, I think.
And it goes back to self-care.
Yeah.
It's a form of self-care, and you don't have to show it to anybody. It's not like you're trying to create a Da Vinci. You're not trying to do any masterpiece. You're just doing. It's a verb. You're doing and you're in it. So.
Well, let me ask you this, Andrea. If there were 3 things that you really wanted people to take away, if you could look them in the eye and encourage them in this season of their life, what 3 things do you think you would really want them to hear from your heart to theirs? Okay.
So one is, and I think I said this earlier, but I really mean it. I'm just me. I'm this woman on this planet. And if I can do it, you can do it. There's nothing extra special about me that's not extra special about you. I really believe that. And it's not like I have a leg up or anything. It's just, if I can do it, you can do it. All right. So that's one. A second one would be that I really believe that during a time and a season of being in a dark area where we are, that if you can find a little light and a little joy every day, if you can just search for that. And for me, it could be something as simple as the color of a flower. Or one of my favorite things is the sound of birds flying over my head. If I stop and I'm like, oh, what was that swish? It's if you can start to think about that and I have a third one, but just on a side note about that, I love Kathy Heller. Kathy Heller is like one of my favorite inspirational person. And she said, if you're having a hard time, think about your 4 favorite. She had 4 favorite things. Okay. And I know I'm sorry, I'm going off on a little tangent here, but I think it helps me. Is that what's your favorite smell? What's your favorite feel? Like what feels good to you? What's your favorite sound? And that's why I thought of bird. And what's your favorite color? And so if you are in a dark place and you're feeling really stuck, or you're sad, or you're going through a hard time through the pandemic or anything that's happening right now, think about those things for a minute, and you'll start to feel that joy by thinking like, what's your favorite feeling of something? So it's just a little exercise, and I love it because the sound of the birds is literally one of my favorite sounds. And if you can start to every day go out and think about your day and just go, okay, what is bringing me joy right now? What do I appreciate? And I think it's really important to have the gratitude and appreciate the little things. They don't have to be big. They don't have to be big at all. They can be the little things. And then let's see, because I really went off on a tangent there. My third one, which I think is really important about with your podcast. Get that age thing out of your head for your limiting belief. I think that especially as women, we can conquer anything. We can do anything. It doesn't matter if you're 50. It doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, 80, 90, or 100. We can do anything we want and set our mind to. Mm-hmm. So I probably have about 15 more things to tell you, but
those are good ones though, because it's true. We all have the capacity and the ability to do something new. Just look back at what you've done and who you've been and the way you've served, right? I mean, geez, how many hundreds of hats have we worn?
Yeah. Go back 2 years, go back 5 years, whatever it is, go back and say, can you believe what I've done? Oh my goodness. And if you're in 2 years and you are still in the same spot because you are still in a job maybe you don't like and you're thinking about it, think about that too. Like, get yourself to that next better place. Think about that next better thought. Think about that next better choice. And then slowly but surely you'll get there. And life is beautiful. Life is amazing. And sure, there's times when it's hard. Absolutely. But keep looking for that joy. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andrea, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Yeah, it was so great to hear your story and the genuine adventure that it was for you. You just picking up the next crumb, right? I love hearing that.
That is it. I'm looking for the crumbs.
Yes, and they're there, right? And it's such a joy to meet somebody who found a different way, even without necessarily seeking it out, but that it found you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
so fun to chat. I love it.
I know, right? This is the best part of what I do. This is it right here. Just getting to meet amazing people. So how can people find you, Andrea?
Okay. Pretty easy. My website is andrea-garvey.com. So ANDREA and then GARVEY.com. So on my website, you'll see my courses and my art and chops and all that good stuff. And then probably my handle for social media is the same, and Instagram, Pinterest, it's at andrea-garvey-art.
Very nice. I love the streamline. Super simple. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to thank you again so much for saying yes to me. What a joy this has been.
Oh, so much fun. It's a great way for us to start off the day too, because we're in California and it's like the day is just beginning. So thank you so much too. I had a great time.
Awesome. Friends, today I've been speaking with Andrea Garvey. She's an artist and a teacher and lover of art. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 268, I will have all the links to Andrea and her social media. And while you're there, please leave your name and email address. I send out very periodic emails of encouragement. Friends, this is one of those conversations that I keep bringing up, and that is our midlife years are going to be our best years. I believe this to the bottom of my soul. We have brought so much magic into this season of life because of who we are, what we've done, how we've served, how we've shown up in the world. All of that has been bringing us to this point of midlife. And what is that next iteration of you? What is that next crumb you can pick up? What is that next curious question you can ask yourself, and to move in a direction and to release the need to know the complete answer and just look for the next best step. You will be so amazed at the journey you go on, and chances are it won't look the way you think it looks, and that's okay. That's the adventure that we're on, is finding that vibrant, intentional, aligned midlife second half living. I promise you it's there for every single one of you. Start the journey. Stay curious. Don't give up. Fight those negative thoughts and give yourself a chance. Thank you so much for listening with us today. I hope you've been encouraged. Please share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. We look forward to sharing more inspirational people and conversations in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.